Call this work session to order. We're considering AO number 2019-15. Can we start with you, Mr. Weddle?
John Weddleton. Ukraine.
Gretchen Wemhoff.
Peterson. Christopher Constant.
Austin Wynn Davidson.
Eric Croft.
Tim Johnson.
And then who do we have online? We had some people, maybe they'll come up as I do. Ms. Wimhoff, did you want to start with something?
You know, I did, if you
Okay,
don't mind.
sure.
I just want to make a comment. I was driving, I teach for the university, and I was driving from the university here, and I forgot about Ferrandi, which is silly, but as I was driving down Ingra, coming to town, there was a holdup, and there was a man with a cane, he's blind, and someone had to get out of their car, pull over, get out of the car, and help him get back on the sidewalk because he was walking on the road because the sidewalk was seriously only maybe a foot wide. And I just wanted to say that I was really impressed with the citizen that stopped and helped them. But I definitely think that that's something we should always be considerate. So I'll follow through and call the right people. But I just thought that was something that I was sad to see, and I know that road is a state road, but it's still got sidewalks that our residents walk on. So I just had to share that I was.
We know you'll fix that before you leave.
You know that well, if someone wants to call someone and save them from me, that's a good thing. But I'll make the calls.
Mr. Training.
Would you say the way the city regulations read, the homeowner, property owners are responsible for cleaning the sidewalk? A lot of good business owners, the public doesn't know that. It's not the city that cleans the sidewalk, it's the owner of the property that cleans the sidewalk.
All right, there we go. We are here, however, on AO 219-15, and we've had two work sessions, primarily one by some of the supporters and then some by some of the opponents, a public testimony, and that's been continued. The thing I'd like to accomplish, and prepared a packet for everybody, so you should have what was distributed, the text of the ordinance, and then a thicker packet that starts with the ordinance. And let me just say what's in it, because I hope this can be kind of a markup session where we look at all the proposed amendments from the various parties and come to either a rough agreement on what the amendment or amendments should be, if any, to this ordinance, or to the extent we can't come to it, we at least know where the disagreements are and we know what amendments are going to come, and maybe people can get educated enough to decide whether they're voting yes or no on those amendments. So the packet, again, is the ordinance. It starts with the ordinance. There is not an S version. We're going to do this the old-fashioned way by amendment. I think sometimes an S version can be a very good way when you have a whole bunch of comprehensive changes that people have worked on to do. But here I think issue by issue makes more sense. Anyway, after the ordinance is Health Department, Anchorage Health Department, their proposed amendments. I just met with them, and they've amended those some, and they brought the fiscal note down a lot. I appreciate that. It's going to be a complaint-driven process. They do make the point, and they're right, that even these little manageable things that we add to their agenda over time amount to real people who have to do it. But they did bring the fiscal note down to about 20,000, and we'll get to that. So that's their proposed amendments and their older fiscal note. The next page is a run from the Municipality of Anchorage Work Comp Division, the amounts paid by the fire department for firefighter cancer claims, essentially since '85. It's about $6 million. Just under $6 million, of which about $2 million has been paid and about $4 million is on reserve for open cases or cases coming. The email that all of you got, I believe, from Mr. Cabot, who's the largest local retailer of furnishings, and his comments about his investigations and the fact that a lot of this may be out of a lot of the furniture that is sold. The amendments that were proposed by the chemical industry and some of the other industry groups, the rationale for those amendments that they proposed, the suggested amendments from ACAT, or the Alaska Community Action on Toxics, and then the thing that was referred to a number of times in both work sessions, the Code of Federal Regulation from the Consumer Product Safety Commission, where they took their position on these hazardous chemicals. Questions, objections to that? Going through the various amendments that that the parties have suggested. Really quick on the then on the fiscal impacts, the Department of Health originally was going to hire one person to do this, an investigation and an awareness campaign. I think in the best of all possible worlds, they still would like to do that, but they've submitted a revised fiscal note of about $20,000 a year for just responding to. It's a third of a person, quarter of a person, and some of the things that they need. The hope is, and that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, that it'll just take sending a letter to them to say, you can't be selling this here, it's got prohibited stuff. But they reminded me before the meeting, and they're right, that sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, and they have to do more effort. But we appreciate you doing that. And I'll be working on the C, which Mr. Traney reminded me should come with it. So it'll include the $20,000 of costs. I don't know quite how to quantify any potential savings on if we spend $6 million. And the fire department reminded me that's just on paid out work comp claims. It doesn't count time loss. It doesn't count moving around of schedules. It doesn't count the impact. And it's just for firefighters. It's not the every other cancer that we pay for through health or for anything else. So it's really difficult to quantify the savings of a diminishment in cancer risk. But anyway, I'll try and get that. I'll have that before Tuesday. Mr. Cavett says that most of this is out of furniture in at least Anchorage as far as he can tell. And that's good in the sense that the industry has already done it to some extent. I was thinking when I heard the dual comments of don't do this, it'll be it's unnecessary because we're already doing it, and it'll absolutely destroy us, and it'll end business as we know it, and it will be disastrous. It seems to me you kind of got to pick your criticism. Is this irrelevant or is it catastrophic? But I've seen those dual arguments on many major policies. It was on the anti-discrimination ban. It's like you don't need it, and it'll be horrible. And it does seem to me that it's not that uncommon to do this. I would like to have, when we're done, a ban setting that principle out, but that has the lightest impact on business possible. And so one of the things they're talking about removing the labeling. There was a lot of discussion on the labeling. I've asked Mr. Gates to draft an amendment that deletes the labeling requirement as requested, though a lot of the supporters don't like that at all. And another one that says we'll just adopt the California standard, because there was a lot of evidence presented that if you're going to make a piece of furniture and you want to sell it anywhere in the world almost, but anywhere in America, you're going to do the California standard just because you want to be able to sell there. So it should be a relatively light burden or none at all because they're already going to do that. Mr. Chairman?
Eric, Section 3 has implementation date immediately. I think you need to have a time phase in for it, like in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever. So you give the industry time, but still have free return chemicals to get them off their shelves and gone. Just an idea, because with this in here, the minute you sign it, as chairman, it becomes effective. You might just consider giving it a time frame to come in.
Great, and I think that was one of the suggestions from one of the industry groups, that there be a phased lead-in. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, we understand that some of the callers dropped off. Could we take a 1 minute at ease and call them back?
Great, yeah. And so then we'll start with the health department, and I know representatives here, Deanne's here. Maybe you could quickly walk us through the changes you recommended, and we can do a markup.
Frank, are you on the line?
Did you guys do a long walk? Yes.
Oh, I didn't go on that. I was working.
So that was a selfie, not a Austin shot?
Steph was doing
Yeah.
a selfie video while she was.
That dog was so cute. It's like a royal.
Wasn't that cute? And I was just looking at Steph. She was so cute. She's like beaming, you know, like this.
Hello.
Hi, Pam. Hang on 1 second. Okay, Pam, is Megan there?
This is Megan.
So it sounds like everyone's there. Thank you. Frank, are you there? All right.
Middle name.
Yes.
So, this is Eric Croft. We have Pam and who on the line?
Hi, this is Megan Calvin of the San Francisco Department of the Environment here on the South Beach.
Oh, great. Okay. We were meeting this largely as a sort of write-up session. We've been presented amendments from some of the industry groups, the Coalition on Toxic up here, our health department. But, Megan, what's your last name again?
Kalsman, Kalsman, the San Francisco Department of Environment.
Yeah, so if you wanted to just briefly tell us whatever you wanted, but your experience, you guys were some of the leaders on banning these or the concern about these. So anything you think that would be relevant for us? We're somewhat smaller than you.
Definitely. Here in San Francisco, we found that it was really important that we already have the TU 117 2013 as well as SB 1019 labeling on all the furniture sold here in California, because everyone is already putting these labels on, and that way we can tell if it does contain or doesn't contain flame retardants. And the reason why we passed this ordinance is because the California Department of Consumer Affairs found that about 75% of furniture in California doesn't contain flame retardants, but there's still a quarter that did. So we really seek to close the gap by banning all flame retardant chemicals as a class of chemicals in upholstered furniture, reupholstered furniture, and certain juvenile products. And I heard a little bit about the timeline for implementation. And here in San Francisco, we actually had a 1 year from the implementation deadline. So it just went into effect in January 2019. So we had a year to do outreach to retailers, and even before that, we were already having retailers who were sold furniture pledge to sell flame retardant-free furniture. So I think having a little bit of time to let the retailers know about this is really important, and doing community outreach has been really effective in passing our ordinance.
A year of delay, and then you found, so California passed the TB 117 2013 standard, so then you already had labeling. So then labeling was the easy way. You didn't have to test things necessarily. You could just look on the label and say, you met the label requirement, but here in San Francisco, these 25% that still have them, that say on the label, we still have them, you shouldn't sell those here.
That's correct, and the reason why they have the label is to let consumers know, and that made it really convenient for us to know as well. But the difficult thing about that is that juvenile products are not required to have the same labeling to let us know if there's flame retardants or not. And so in that case, we will be asking retailers for a letter from their manufacturer saying that it doesn't contain flame retardants, and doing testing, laboratory testing for some pieces. So it's a little bit different with the juvenile products, but for furniture it was very easy since we already have the label.
Okay, and then we've, so when the industry groups were before, they asked about, that labeling. We had our own labeling requirement, and that was burdensome on them. The juvenile products, and we'll get to that, but then car seats became an issue. There was testimony that sometimes there's just flame retardants infused in the plastic or other parts of the car seat just as a requirement. Did the California law or your law affect car seats?
So here in San Francisco, car seats are currently exempted from the law.
Yeah, I think we were running up against that. It just seemed too difficult and too complicated. But juvenile products, so toys, if you will, you included, and those don't have the TB 117, so that's where it was less easy than furnishing than just turning it over and looking at the label.
That's correct, yes.
Mr. Weddleton?
So, when you deal with like small retailers who carry a whole array of different kinds of toys and they buy through distributors who get them from manufacturers all around the world, how do you handle that? You go into a retailer and say, show me this doesn't have fire retardants in this little tissue?
Yeah, so our ordinance focuses on children's furniture, if you will, so bassinets, booster seats, rollers, high chairs, play yards, etc. And all the smaller retailers, we do understand that there's a lot of different manufacturers. Like Target, for example, is a huge store that sells a lot of these products. And they have been working with their compliance and product safety specialists to make sure that the products don't contain flame retardants. And we're just asking for a letter from the manufacturers stating that they don't contain.
Keep going, yeah.
Thanks on that. Walmart's, I think, is a pretty big operation. Think about your local comic shop. And it's one guy, he's got 2 employees, but he's got walls full of these things. And ours, I don't know about yours, but ours includes toys. And they'll have some toys on there. And this is a practical thing. How would they, I mean, even if they really, really don't want to sell poison to their customers, how would they be able to document that?
In San Francisco, ours doesn't include the language toys, so we wouldn't be including like plastic toys or electronic toys. Mainly with anything with foam inside, because it could be more likely to contain flame retardant chemicals. So yeah, the smaller retailers have to comply. This is the larger retailers do.
Thank you.
Did you already ask about it?
So I was looking at the definition. Ours has a juvenile product, and so we may have, that'll be something we come back to and figure out. Mr. Trainee and then
Eric, we heard
Mr. Dumbo.
somebody testified on the fact that even computers have flame retardant sprayed into them. So did California address the issue of computers, which not necessarily children, but computers are everywhere?
Yeah, so Ms. Kausman, ours had an exempt. I think we'll have an exemption for electronic products, but did you guys concern computers or the electronics that sometimes is included in chairs and things like that?
Yeah, so our ordinance, as far as the definition for upholstered furniture, does include electronics. It doesn't exempt that. So we have been working with certain manufacturers of electronic furniture, like massage chairs or chairs with USB plugs. And additionally, we know that a lot of these electronics are basically required to have flame retardants in them at this time, but we have a provision in our ordinance where anyone can apply for a waiver from strict compliance. So we actually have been working with the electronic industry to see if they can use safer flame retardants or move the market away from using flame retardants in these products, or especially parts that are accessible to the consumer.
I'm not sure we have the pull to do that, but we'll think about that as an option.
You got the cost here.
Yeah.
Implementing this. California's huge. We're a smaller market.
Well, yeah, this is just the San Francisco, but still the points go to Mr. Dunbar.
I think that was my question about internal electronic components. So I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. So for internal electronic components, like you said, with massage chairs, you're saying they are or are not exempt from the ban?
They are not exempt. So it can be a juvenile product, like a bouncy chair that has electronics, and that's covered under ordinance, as well as massage chairs and other furniture with electronics.
And then just general electronics. So like my colleague said, like a laptop, for example, if that had these chemicals, are those exempt or not?
Our ordinance doesn't include
It's not.
like laptops or PCs. It's just furniture that might have electronics in it or juvenile products.
Thank you.
Mr. Constant.
Thank you very much. You just mentioned a waiver from strict compliance. What does that look like? How does that affect, or how do they apply, and how does it work?
So any person or any group of people can apply for a waiver from the ordinance. For example, if a retailer here in San Francisco needs more time to comply, they might ask for a year. their products, and we actually have had a couple petitions come through asking for another year because the whole state of California passed this law as well that goes into effect in 2020. And we have had waivers for customer-owned material, which is where a customer may bring in upholstery fabric from India that they love, but they want to have their furniture manufactured with that fabric. And yeah, so we've been working with different associations and retailers for petitions, and some of them are asking for more time to comply.
Thank you.
Did you just say, I'm coming to, that California passed a ban after the 2013 labeling requirements? Have they moved to a ban that'll come in 2020?
Yes. So the state of California introduced and passed a law, and it goes into effect in 2020, that is not allowing flame retardants in upholstered furniture, juvenile products, as well as mattresses. And it's really similar to San Francisco, but they exempt a couple different products as well. So.
Oh, very interesting. And then you said juvenile products, but I thought you said before that you didn't affect toys. So are juvenile products in your ban and the California ban in or out? Are they banned or covered or not, I guess?
So juvenile products are covered, and we list examples as bassinets, booster seats, infant walkers, nursing pads, nursing pillows, strollers, and it says including but not limited to all those examples. So we're focusing on children's products like children's furniture that might contain foam, but we don't list toys in our definition of juvenile products.
Okay. Ms. Wimhoff, yeah.
Yeah, mine's probably a simple question. The number for your ordinance, I mean, if I wanted to read it personally.
She does her homework, so how do we read about your ordinance? Or could you send Pam or us just links on where we can find yours and the California one?
Yes, I don't know if I have your email, but if someone could give me that info.
Yeah, so crofte@muni.org works, right? We're still.
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
crofte@muni.org.
CROFTE@MUNI.org.
Okay, will do.
All the long one, yeah. Dick Train.
All right, a question, ma'am. When you said the California law takes effect when in 2020, was that done by the state legislature or was that a citizen initiative process?
It went through the state legislature process.
It was. Okay, good. Thank you.
That's been really very interesting. Thank you, and thank you for the work you do down there. Any other questions? And then we'll get to mark up. Ms. Wimhoff?
Do you have any advice of something that perhaps you came over a challenge that you had to deal with? Is there any advice you can give us to get through a challenge or?
Yeah, what are we missing?
Let's see. I would say just making sure that the retailers are aware of this ordinance. And since the state of California passed it, it's definitely going to be widespread throughout the country. So, yeah, that would be my advice.
January 1, 2020 is when California's takes effect?
Yes.
Okay. Fabulous. We'll let you go back to protecting the citizens of San Francisco, but that was very interesting. Pam, are you still on?
Yes.
Great. To the extent she can send you stuff as well, and you can get it to us. We have Deanne here, and maybe really quickly, if you could go through the amendments that you suggested. So you did on February 5th, and then I see you gave me again this, and some of the ones aren't needed. Anyway, would you mind?
We would appreciate that. I'm going to introduce my colleague, Matt Stitchick. I'm going to introduce my colleague, Matt Stitchick, to go over those individually.
Great.
Quickly just walk through our comments. So on page 3 of the proposed ordinance, line 22, we're suggesting the addition of the words within the municipality to the prohibition of distributed distribution of these covered products that would contain flame retardant chemicals, because we don't want the expectation of us police
Doing it statewide? You don't want to do it statewide?
Passing through from the Port of Anchorage.
Okay.
Then on page 3, line 44, we recommend striking where it says, as the Code of Federal Regulations reads on January 1st, 2019, because the Code of Federal Regulations is constantly updated, and you don't want to have to refer to an outdated version of it. And just referencing that
Everyone
section and title of the ordinance
following along? Yeah?
should be sufficient to keep it stable.
Good. Okay. Nick?
So, can
Go
I
ahead.
just note something, Mr. Cross?
Yeah.
So this is in our packet, if you guys didn't see it. He's reading from a list
Correct.
of, yeah.
So I'm reading our
Since we've interrupted
comments.
him, I would just note it's the Port of Alaska now. Not the Port of Maine.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Dick was going to say that. Yeah.
No, it's within the
That's right, Chris
municipality.
represents that part of it.
We don't need to.
But, there is something interesting to contemplate about what impact this would have if we did adopt it as written and then send a message to the whole state of Alaska that this is their port. But that's a philosophical matter for another day.
Okay, and we actually still highly recommend elimination of all of paragraph C on page 4, lines 21 through 49, because we think that's a excessively onerous requirement to try to comply with any potential science-based list of chemicals that could be considered either carcinogenic or flame retardant based on any scientific study. That's just not enforceable.
Okay.
And you already have a very strong reference in referencing the state of Washington's chemicals of concern to children.
Okay, so the C was trying to prevent sort of the things we don't know yet, and you're saying
Right.
it's too difficult, too broad, and we're already piggybacking on Washington in B2E, so we would catch some of those anyway.
Correct.
Okay, got it. So that's their recommendation. And then your fourth recommendation, page 5, line 26.
Wait, if
Yep.
I might come back to that, wouldn't the same concern be on that section B2E that we would remove
Ooh.
January 1, 2019? So it's not to
Good. Excellent.
force
Thank you.
ourselves backwards and then actually tie ourselves into it.
Absolutely. You want to reference the current version. Thank you. Good catch.
Gold star from Mr. Constant, page 5, line 26.
Okay. All right. We really need a very clear demonstration of what products are covered by a manufacturer's statement of compliance with this ordinance. So we either need a manufacturer to state their entire product line is covered, or specific product items, including something that we can match up if we're to be enforcing this. For example, let's say this is now a reactive enforcement where we're just responding to complaints. We have somebody saying, we believe this product is non-compliant. We need the retailer to then produce a statement from the manufacturer that demonstrates that this product is in fact compliant. And we need more detailed information than what is currently proposed in the ordinance. We would like it to either identify products specifically or state that an entire product line is covered, and it should also state it should also be signed and dated so that we know what product years are being covered by that statement of compliance.
All right, you want more clarity there.
More than 24 months old.
Every time we do clarity, we increase the burden too, but okay.
Right, but if.
Got it.
If we just have something that says, all baby products are compliant, you know, I'm looking at something that says for toddlers, I don't know.
Noted at page 6, line 6.
Okay, page 6, line 6.
Move up covered products.
Yeah, we recommend putting the definition before it's
Okay.
referenced in the ordinance.
24.
Page 6, line 24. This is just a note of interest. By our interpretation, this ordinance would not apply to children and infants' clothing, and we also believe it does not apply to toys. That is the same interpretation that I believe California has. We are mimicking their language. So when they define a juvenile product and say that it covers all these, here, I'll go back to the definition of juvenile product, but there's a train of similar items.
Yeah, okay. So not toys, not
toys,
clothing.
not clothing.
Okay.
Okay, but that's just based on the logic of the types of things that are included in juvenile products. Somebody could argue that toys and clothing are considered. I'd be curious how California,
Well, I think
what experience they had.
Ms. Kalsman clarified that they weren't. Yeah.
The toys, but she didn't mention clothing.
Didn't mention clothing, said not in toys. I think
We had
clothing.
legislation in the past.
But this is the same language.
I know, right? And so I think clothing has its own issues and regulatory framework. I think the feds may have even stepped into clothing,
I think so.
but I'll check. Yeah,
By
children's
the-
clothing.
By the train of types of items listed there, that's not what's being targeted.
Okay, and then your 7th point, page 8, line 23. That goes to Mr. Trainey's effective
Right.
date.
We would strike that, we repeal comment 7 because there actually is, in the proposed ordinance, a implementation date of January 1st, which is right here on the 3rd page, line 21. So this would take effect January 1st, 2020, and then if you go to page 5, line 7, any retailer who purchased items prior to January 1st, 2020 would be allowed to sell those products through. So it says the sale, offer for sale or distribution of a covered product by, prohibitions contained in this section shall not apply to the following. The sale, offer for sale or distribution of a covered product by a retailer who purchased or acquired the product before January 1st, 2020. So that provides us a sell-through.
And does it also then allow someone to say, hey, I've got until January 1st to buy something cheap because it can't be sold anywhere else, and if I buy it on December
Those materials
31st.
can be sold through, yes. And now, I don't know how they're going to prove to us when a particular lot of items is purchased, but I guess that's
Okay.
detail yet to be determined. Okay.
And then 8, we already have weren't you just describing a sell-through?
Correct. So 8, we retract that comment as well.
Yeah.
And then
9, you guys have modified with your new.
9 is a new comment for us, which is basically that we okay. Yeah, so
We got it.
page 7, line H is saying penalties. Any person who violates, okay, so this is basically saying,
Okay. We got to move on, but thank you. Those were very helpful. So you guys have seen again in the packet is the $5.7 million of cancer costs from the AFD that we'll use on the C. Mr. Cavit's comments that I'll incorporate in the language on the C. And then here are the amendments proposed by the various industry groups.
Was the question of cancer. Was that ongoing, numerous cancer issues? Was the fireman that got exposed to plastics being burned off wire at a homeless camp that got cancer attributed to that?
I'm
One
sure
big case, or is it multiple ones?
it's multiple cases. I'm sure Andy Mullen's case was in there. And so it's all, you can see it's from 1985 to the present, and it has past paid and then a bunch for ongoing cases.
So it keeps repeating it, so that's what I wanted to know.
There's multiple cancer deaths and then just some injuries.
What about Eric?
So the amendments proposed by the industry group, they propose eliminating labeling E. I'll bring that forward. I'm not personally in favor of it, but I'll bring that on Tuesday night. But I will have another that says you'll have the California labeling. And we've heard both that they're already doing that, so the cost isn't very much, and it's useful for your enforcement because they check yes we are or no we're not.
Yes, but I just wanted to make the point that if we pare this down to a non-proactive ordinance where it's reactive, we're just responding to complaints, then it essentially then becomes for us a matter of demonstrating or checking for manufacturers. We have to trust the manufacturer's statement of compliance. That's what it boils down to. We're not testing anything. We're not sampling products. We're not screening. We have to go by what the manufacturer says.
You bet, and they're in a whole lot bigger trouble if they're forging that certificate or not doing it at all. I mean that becomes a big issue. Yeah.
We're trying to figure out which sheet you're on. Are you on Cabot or which?
No, move past Cabot to the proposed amendments in red, the industry group amendments. Yes.
So unfortunately, there's no color.
Yeah.
So.
But they underlined them or crossed them out. So page 1 didn't have any. It's just the text. Page 2 didn't have any. All the way to E, labeling, where they eliminated the labeling. I'll have that if anyone wants to offer it. I'm not going to, but I'll have it drafted. I'm going to have a section that says you shall comply with the California labeling requirements. Mr. Constant?
I just would like to respond to the idea that we're dependent on them to be truthful to us. In fact, almost every business decision over time, big societal shifts require us to have faith that our merchants are going to participate in a legal and ethical way. And in fact, we will find over time that they do generally. So I don't think that's something to worry about at all, that we can't get strict compliance, because we will over time.
And they didn't note it, but just above labeling, we commented on it, we talked about it. D4, electronic products and electronic components of upholstered furniture, reupholstered furniture, and juvenile products. Mr. Gates, that's new, right? That's not in. I see on our original just D1, 2, 3. So the electronic component is an additional exemption.
I thought you guys just added
look.
part of that based
What?
on some comment
The
from
whole
last
paragraph goes in.
Okay, so it was both, right? 4 wasn't there, and then 4, as they originally said, it just had electronic components, and we added electronic products. So that will be there, and then
That was specific electronic products, so that it does not make people think it means computers and tablets.
it does. We're not stepping into the area of computer. It's more complicated than this ordinance, and there was some testimony that, well, you may say, I don't want you to have it covered with fire retardants. These chemicals may be part of the manufacturing process. They may be internal. Mr. Dunbar.
So in that case, I do think it is a little confusing as written. I think we need to be more specific in 4. It might just be a comma to be clear that electronic products, comma, electronic components of upholstered furniture, right? I mean,
It's not just electronic products in upholstered
exactly.
furniture.
It's all electronic products and then also electronic components of upholstered furniture. And
take that and out and do a comment.
Yeah.
Got that, Mr. Gates?
You like it?
Shattering tax group.
That extra.
He was a comma dude.
I
Yeah.
had argued with Dean earlier about fewer and less than, so.
Oh, I have that.
Did you want to say something?
I have a color-coded version, if that helps easier to identify what the proposed amendments were, and I could read them out too.
Well, were there any on the first 2 pages?
Yeah, 'cause I heard that you had the black and white version, so.
Yeah, were there any on the first 2 pages?
Yeah, so on page 2, number 3, B, number B23, that was also a proposed amendment.
Do not include reactive or polymeric flame retardant chemicals?
Point of order.
Yeah.
I have this.
You have the red?
This is what we're working from. Where did this come from, and how are there, what you're calling new stuff, I have here, I think we got this.
We did. We got all this at a previous, and I just put together everybody's we got the health department's
Right, I
previously.
understand. So you made a packet that includes this.
Right.
So when you refer to for new, that's
It's not in the ordinance now.
it's not the
It's a,
ordinance, okay. There are these other, okay, that's,
That's the point, because, yeah, we did get this the last work session.
so.
I'm trying to look at health, the chemical industry, and ACAT's amendments and see which go in.
So when you refer to something that's new, in here, you mean new to what's currently the
Yeah. But I appreciate having the red when I didn't. So let me slow down and back up, even though we're running out of time. Page 2, 3, prohibited flame retardant chemicals do not include reactive or polymeric flame retardant chemicals. I don't remember the rationale for that. Does anyone?
Is Bickford on the phone?
Well, and I did, to be complete, so I could give you a complete packet. At the end of this, which isn't red, I printed their explanation of their amendment. So if you look past this, it says the exemption for polymeric flame retardants you see that, everybody? Right after the amendments is a rationale for amendments to Anchorage ordinance. So they're explaining, the industry groups, why they put them in. And the second one is their explanation of that polymeric flame retardant exemption. Does the Department of Health or ACAT have a comment on the industry groups wanting polymers out?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we certainly do.
Real quickly, Pam, you think that's a mistake or that's okay?
We think it's a mistake because there's actually quite a lot of scientific evidence that shows that the polymeric flame retardants also leach out of the products as long as utilized during normal use, and they also create toxic combustion products when caught on fire.
Okay, good. Thank you, Pam. Thanks. Department of Health have a position on it? It's okay if you don't.
The polymeric chemicals would also be in the state of Washington's chemicals of concern list. So for us, it's all inclusive.
Good. So if anyone wants an amendment to include that, I don't intend to. That is to add that exemption, if you will. But that's an issue. So that's on that page. And then we were on electronic products and electronic components with a comma or separated. We've discussed the labeling. F1 is distributors and retailers shall have 60 days to obtain the statement from the product. Essentially a 60-day window. Any objection, concern about that? That's something Health had even mentioned, or? Yeah, Mr. Chamber.
We're talking about a hold on the product if they don't want them sold during that time period. Are you going to let them sell it waiting to get approval or disapproval? Are you talking about the product's not being sold during this time period?
I think the interpretation of that is they could sell it while you're getting it. So it doesn't have to be.
You want to let them sell it where you're waiting to get approval on whether it's healthy or not?
I guess just because it's a pain in the ass. What, Mr. Weddleton?
I wouldn't phrase it quite that way, but a lot of products you get in the store are ripen like a banana. You know, I can sell it for the next 2 weeks, then the world moves on. And if someone comes in and says, that might have flame retardants, prove
Right.
it.
You've got 60 days to have the Captain Marvel.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah.
And
Did you?
it's sensible to have a period for them to comply.
Okay, Mr. Constant, and then we got to move on.
I think think we've also leaned in, at least in this conversation, towards allowing industries to continue selling the products until they don't have them anymore. And if they've invested their money, we don't necessarily want to cause loss for them, but we just want to ensure those products are not future sold. And so it seems like there's a reasonable argument to allow them to do it, but once the product is tested and inspected, you can no longer sell it. So it seems to be reasonable.
Because what about the children that could be impacted by the product? Because from their perspective, it was fine for him to sell it. On the other hand, we could find out it's damaging to the kid.
I totally
Ms. Traney, I
agree.
thought that end of the table was arguing impact on business. Have you switched? Have you moved?
I totally
Yeah.
agree. However,
What's that end of the table?
Carlton doesn't want to be categorized.
Any weapon in hand.
Yeah.
Just to,
I
just to
understand.
clarify this, I am totally against poisoning ourselves.
Excellent.
I'm all for preventing it. The reality is, I don't think many toys have fire retardants. I don't know why they would. Proving
Right.
it would be exceptionally difficult anyway.
Proving a negative, yeah.
And I'd be warned that things happen. People do crazy things. And I paid a $5,000 fine.
Yeah.
And my company dragged through the mud because I had someone throw trash in the dumpster.
I do remember
It's a
that.
bizarre interpretation that can happen here.
Mr. Peterson.
Marijuana budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was looking at, under covered products, they're talking about used or secondhand furniture, used or secondhand juvenile products. Somebody's selling stuff at a garage sale, how are we supposed to enforce the code?
No, covered products do not include. So what you're seeing there is the exemption.
It's an exemption. Okay.
Yeah, so it says covered products means all this stuff, and then covered products does not mean that stuff.
All right.
Good.
Thank you.
And then that brings us nicely done to the final thing that the industry groups wanted, which is adding at the end of the stuff that is not included, child restraint systems, based on the argument that those sometimes have infused retardants. And that's what California did, is your understanding. They exempted those. Everyone see that? What, sir? Well, yeah. And so those are the industry amendments, proposed amendments.
I'd like to ask, I remember in our discussion about polymers in any form, and I'm reading about the industry recommendation did you understand that last word? What am I trying to say? It's this paper he told me about, the rationale, exemption for polymeric flame retardants. Is that argument that something that you folks agree with, on that polymeric flame retardants are large inert molecules that are too large to cross biological membranes? Is that an issue at all in your study?
They said they did not want the polymers excluded. Yeah,
Okay,
they disagreed with the industry on
So
it.
you're disagreeing, and that's, I just wanted to refresh that because I remember that was a big deal. And so this language here is not in agreement with your.
That's right. And I'm gonna bring forward an amendment. Any member, of course, can do any amendment they want, but the amendment that the sort of omnibus, is not gonna do the polymer. And so if you want to exempt polymers, you should do that on your own. And it's gonna have a different labeling. It's gonna change labeling to California, not eliminate it. And otherwise, I think I'm taking all the industry recommendations other than those two.
Eric, do you also have an amendment to take all or most of the health departments?
Yeah, and that's why we're going through the walkthrough. I've got in my sort of master amendment sheet, I'll take all the health department amendments, all but the two industry amendments that we discussed. And then if we can get through it, here are the ACAT suggestions. I want to see what they think on that. Ms. Weddle.
Just real quick, so from ACAT, do you object to the eliminating car seats, child seats?
Yeah, Sue.
I just wanted to make
Sue's
a
there.
comment that the language of this current ordinance actually already aligns with San Francisco, and it doesn't, the definition for juvenile product does not necessarily include car seats because it's designed for residential use, and nowhere in the list are car seats mentioned.
Okay, so it may already have not been, and do you mind us clarifying that we don't mean child restraint seat systems?
I don't know if Cam wanted to add something to that.
Some,
I mean,
We always get this in legal discussion. Somebody say, well, it wasn't in there anyway. Well, then it shouldn't be a bad thing to clarify that you didn't mean it. Pam, can we clarify that we're excluding and not covering child restraint systems? She'll come back when she can, but I for now I'm going to do that. If that's what we meant, we might as well be clear about what we meant. And if we want them in, then we might as well be clear we want them in. So really quick, ACAT on your, and I'm sorry, Sue's there, and your name again? Well, Sue. Hi. Yeah, Jessica. Okay, great. Whoever wants to talk for ACAT, what's your name?
My name is Patty.
Okay, who wants to talk for ACAT?
I will.
What's your name? If you're going to talk for him, what's your name?
My name is Sue, and I do want to just make a quick mention that car seats can be manufactured without flame retardant chemicals, and it's that technology is being produced. It's
You only have 2 minutes to do your whole amendment. So, ready? Number 1 is remove non-polymeric. We talked about that. You're on page 2. You suggest an amendment in lines 18, 19, striking the following phrase: but includes a sealing preemption. Why would we do that?
Are you referring to the?
I'm referring to your sheet of proposed amendments that you gave us on February 8th. We've talked about number 1.
No, it's here.
No,
It's
it's
here.
not. It's right here.
He's just asking them to, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Page 1, we talked about your first recommended amendment is on polymers versus non-polymers. And we talked about that issue. Is that a conforming one?
Oh, it's in the whereas is what they want to strike out. Okay.
Yeah, so that's fine if we're going to include the polymers. Page 2, 18 through 19, we're still in the whereases. Why do you care about the whereases?
Because it's not strictly speaking accurate.
But it's not in law.
States and municipalities are allowed to regulate unless EPA has taken action.
Okay. So there's the explanation for that. Page 2, line 21. Oh. All right. Page 2, line 31. These are all in the whereases?
Yeah.
All right. Can we get to something that's in a law? Page 3, line 32. What are we doing there? Do you see your proposed amendment there?
I believe the intention was that a federally weaker law would weaken the local law, so basically giving the local jurisdiction.
Well, if they did, they did. Well, okay, so that'd be great, but if it's a federal law, if they preempted us, they preempted us.
But
Thank you.
I mean, I guess if the I think what they're saying is if we're incorporating a federal law by reference, then we might as well say equally or more protective, because there are federal laws that pass that don't require you, that don't preempt you, right? So kind of no harm, no foul, I think.
Good, okay. So I'm going to add that unless somebody has an objection. Page 4, line 49, war hormone system. Why? Remove or hormone system? Why wouldn't I want stuff that disrupted the hormone system?
The endocrine system is hormones.
There we go. Who knew? Page 6, line 6. Yeah, I guess that's the answer. Not me, and someone else did. That's what redundant means, too. Page 6, line 6. Add bedding to what? Covered product means bedding, blah, blah, blah.
So where do you want to put it?
Under the definition of covered product. So we just hadn't included bedding, and that's had been part of the discussion.
So after. their upholstered furniture.
But is there no section where it says bedding? This is it? This is the
It just was not in the definition and should be?
It was in addition to the definition of juvenile product, hoping to include children's mattresses and children's toys. And children's mattresses are not regulated by the federal government.
Well, no, wait a minute. This is covered product. If we add bedding to covered product, it's all bedding, infant or not. Which is fine. I just want to be clear about what we're doing. Okay.
I think it would make more sense for the bedding to be under the definition of juvenile products because
We're not doing adult bedding?
I believe there are
No.
federal flammability standards that apply to.
Okay. No is, I got to move. So no, we're not is a good enough answer. So are we adding on toy? I thought California wasn't doing toys. We weren't doing toys. Okay, so I'm not doing either the bedding suggestion or the toy suggestion. 629, plastic casing surrounding electronics. Well, I think there was just a sense that we didn't want to get into the electronics area.
Right, and if we're adding that whole section that basically exempts
Exempts it,
electronics,
then don't do that.
We're not going to contradict ourselves here.
And then, we're going to contradict ourselves someplace else. Page 7, line 4, upholstered furniture. Okay, so are we adding bedding or not?
Are we positive? Oh, I'm sorry.
If you,
I should wait.
can I just make
Yeah.
a comment? If you add it here, you don't need to add it in G because G refers to upholstered furniture. So if you're adding it to the definition,
Right. So we're back down to the question, do we want to add bedding, adult and juvenile?
I would say if bedding is, we can prove, that's a bad word. If we are positive that bedding's already regulated, then we don't need to add it. But if we're not positive, I don't think we should leave it out.
Bedding is subject to a strict federal flammability standard, but not specific.
You mean it can or can't use retardants?
According to federal regulation, they may use flame retardants to meet the flammability standard, but the requirement is to meet that flammability standard, not to meet a specific formulation.
Did you want in on that issue, Mr. Weddleton?
No, I threw it back, but so I'm confused now. You would not include, you would not include bedding for adult bed.
We mean mattresses, not blankets, right?
Okay, mattresses. So you would not include adult mattresses.
why would we say bedding?
They're already controlled by the federal government, but we're here because that's just a flammability standard, but flame retardants are okay.
It doesn't say yay or nay on flame retardants. It just says you must meet this flammability standard, which is cigarettes on the bed, cover of the blanket.
That does true for all of these things. On almost everything we're looking at, they don't say use flame retardants. They say make sure they don't.
Meets this. Sue, did you have a comment on that?
It's a similar thing with the car seats. The car seats don't require flame retardant chemicals either. They're required to meet a flammability standard.
Which they
So I'm
sometimes.
still confused. So you're okay with not
We would rather ban flame retardant chemicals if we could.
In mattresses. So you'd rather include it.
So why, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why isn't that included in here? I guess I overlooked that. I thought it was.
Because it is, the flame retardants are still found in some bedding products because of that strict standard, that strict flammability standard.
But isn't the whole point of this is to get our community to use bedding, I think a mattress is a better term, but that doesn't include that product?
The initial intent was to protect the most vulnerable portion of the population, which is infants and children.
But
And
shouldn't we protect adults while we are at it?
Okay.
Children sleep on adult beds.
We're over our time. When we come Tuesday night, I'll have an amendment that either won't or won't have bedding, and you guys can decide whether you want to add it or not.
You need a
But,
definition of bedding.
well,
Yeah,
right,
bedding
bedding
is
is weird. We mean mattresses, right? That's what that is intended to.
yeah, because bedding could be blankets.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what we were
I thought
confused
when
about.
we were talking about.
All right, appreciate you guys doing this. This was a tough sort of going through it, but we're 5 minutes into the other meeting, so we'll adjourn and come back. You're coming to that one?